Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Commander Clash podcast. We're the Commander Clash crew, Richard, Seth, Krim, and me, Tomer. Hello, we discuss Commander-related topics. And today, we are going to be covering the top most played spot And today we're going to be covering the top most played spot removal in the Commander format. And we're mostly going to EDHREC.com, and we're looking at the most popular options that people seem to be playing the most. And we're going to give our own grading scale. So as usual with these things, we're going to use a tier list to rank them, because the internet loves tier lists. So at the very lowest ranking, we got D, which is don't play, where we will actively look to cut this card from our deck, and we hope to randomly discard it to gamble or whatever. We don't really want to ever have this card ever in our decks. At C, we consider these like an average card. It's like a mediocre filler card. We usually don't run them, but sometimes we will run them just to fill the 99. Perhaps, for example, if it's a budget inclusion, like if we're at a very low budget, this might make the cut because of that reason. But usually we don't run them too often. At B, they're only good in certain decks. So they're good in a small percentage of decks, but we're not going to run them in every single deck. But they will be good in very particular decks. At A, really good overall. These are good in a large percentage of decks. So in most of our decks, we're going to be running them, but it's not like a super auto-include that we're going to run every single deck. But finally, at the coveted S rank, this is literally an auto-include. We're going to run this in pretty much every single one of our decks, and we're going to need a good reason not to include this card in our commander decks if it is available to us. So that's the ranking out of the way, but before we jump into the actual cards, just a quick reminder that you can support the show by heading over to mtggoldfishmerch.com. That's the one. Yes. So you can head over to SG
Goldfish. Unfiring Tomer's been a bad idea. He's forgotten everything.
It's too late, Richard. I'm back. MTGGoldfishMerch.com. You can buy the playmats on Richard's wall. You can make sure that I keep my job and I don't get fired by buying stuff like playmats. And oh my goodness, Richard, if you're looking at this on YouTube, by the way, you get to check out the sweet t-shirt merch. If you're on Spotify, however, just know that me and Richard are holding up our sweet MTG Goldfish t-shirts that you can check out at the store and buy them right now. They're super sweet. And also, you could also help out the channel by on Spotify. You can you can subscribe or whatever, follow it. And then on YouTube, you can like and subscribe and hit the dingle dangle. Those are also something that you can help us out with. Just help us out. Anyway, now that we've done the plugging out of the way, let's jump into the cards. And Richard, kick things off with the first card on our list, the most popular one.
All right. By far the most played card, Swords to Plowshares, in a whopping 58% of eligible decks. So like literally everyone has it. We all know what it does. Single white mana, exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power. So the crew, Seth, Krim, Tomer, all have it as S tier. They agree with EDHREC. I am sitting here at a B. Not even an A, but a B.
I'm so confused.
Yeah, how?
I never play this card. I very rarely play it. I think Path to Exile is actually the better version of it.
What?
And there's other S tier cards that we'll get to in mono white that I play above Swords. So I actually don't like Swords.
Wait. Well, how? Okay, so maybe you don't like Swords. Okay, I can. That's fine. How can it be a worse version of Path to Exile? That's the part that gets me.
All right. This one's pretty close. So I've spent a long time figuring out, should you play Path or should you play Swords? Okay. And after playing mono white for so long, Path is the right answer, because Path either self-ramps in an emergency, right? So you can ramp yourself by pathing one of your creatures. If you path an opponent, it triggers the rest of your terrible white ramp that requires your opponents to have more lands than you. It triggers landfall, and giving a person an extra land, I think, is better than giving them life, because I usually play creature decks. I need to kill them, right? There's also the reverse, though. Swords gains you life to keep alive sometimes, but I think it's close enough. But the extra ramping part makes Path better than Swords, I think. I think it's fairly close, but I think I'd rather play Path.
I hadn't considered that white creatures were so bad you just wanted to kill them with your own Path to Exiles, but that doesn't make sense now that you mention it. It's not as bad as,
like, you have a token generator, you're making, like, mentor tokens or something, you can path it to ramp, right? Like, there are things you can do aside from, like, really making yourself feel bad. Now, the dream, let me lay it out for you. Cartographer's Hawk, equipped with a Dowsing Dagger, you hit him in response to the trigger, you path the Hawk. That's
so
5 mana.
But we're gonna be talking about Path to Exile real soon. But first, we wanna finish up Swords to Plowshares. You put this as a B, Richard. Yeah. All right, so that means you're gonna be putting in a small percentage of decks. What decks would you actually run Swords in then?
If I'm playing the what's the equipment where you pay Boros to, like, get an instant out of your deck? Sunforger. Like, if you have some kind of spell slinger deck, you might need it. Okay. Or if you're, like, really desperate, like if you're playing a control deck, right, and you're actually overloaded on removal. Removal, like, check the records. Go back and check most of my white decks. They are not running Swords to Plowshares, right? Like, I actually do what I say, unlike some people on these tier lists. When I say
my God. All right.
I actually don't play it. I actually don't play this card that often.
Fired.
I don't think you should have that much spot removal in your deck, and there are better ones in these colors on the list for me, which I play, right?
I think that Swords is the best creature removal spell in all of Commander. And if I'm building a 5-color deck and I have room for exactly one creature only spot removal spell, it's going to be Swords. That's the one that I pick every single time. So sure, it doesn't hit everything, but there's certainly value to being a single mana, and just nothing does what Swords does as far as it exiles a creature. It does it instant speed. It only goes a single mana. There's no other card in any color in Magic that does what it does better than it does. So I think it's easy, clear S tier.
This is literally the best creature spot removal in the format. I didn't know it'd be a hot debate, but here's we are.
Here's the key, right? I agree with you guys if you only want to remove a creature, but I will pay the extra mana or two to remove other things as well, right? Which is why I will take the other cards, which we haven't talked, like Generous Gift, Chaos Warp, all of those cards. The mana premium for any removal is much better than saving 1 mana for Swords. Because you're not curving out, right? You're not trying to, like, double spell, like, you know, and like, obviously in, like, Legacy or something, this is insane, right? But you're not, like, turn 3, like, swordsing something and playing a 2-drop and getting a tempo play, right? You're just like, I need to save myself against, like, maybe a Rhystic Study. You know, like, there's, like, some other things you might need to kill. So the extra mana is worth the versatility, which makes it down. But yeah, if you want sheer removal and 1 card removal, this is obviously the most efficient card in the format, right?
I think it's relevant that it's one, and as opposed to being more expensive than the more flexible option. So, like, having multiple mana up is difficult for most decks that aren't, like, draw go focused, like Crim Stout decks, for example. But, like, let's say you're dropping a creature that needs to be dealt with on the same turn, and you need an instant speed answer. It's much more reasonable for me to have 1 white mana up than, you know, like 3 white mana up or whatever to deal with it. Like, let's say, like, you're about to combo off of, like, Veto. I think it's the one that's, like, whenever you gain life, each opponent loses life. Like, you can set up, like, that combo, and you put, like, Veto on the battlefield with Sanguine Bond or Sanguine, or whatever the one is, like the infinite drain combo. If I have that Swords to Plowshares mana up, I just need 1 mana up. I mean, it's much more likely that I'll be able to Swords it than I will to, like, Generous Gift it or something. Like, I could just that could be the difference between winning and losing. So I think that one mana versus 3 is, like, super relevant.
I generally agree with what you're saying, that I too prefer more flexible removal in general, but usually in most of my decks I'll have 1 or 2 just, like, really efficient creature removal spells, and that's, if I'm in white, that's going to be Swords. But in general, I think you're right. I want things that can hit multiple permanent types and be able to blow up whatever I need to blow up, but I don't think that means you shouldn't play any single targeted, you know, creature removal. So I guess that's the difference. Like, I put a lot of value in having, like, 1, maybe 2 of these effects in my deck, and it usually ends up being Swords, just because Swords is so good at its job.
I play it in every deck that I have in white. So I think, yeah, like, I'm not, there's no timeline where I'm giving my opponent an additional land. If I'm about resource denial, so if that's the case, then I'm giving you a resource, right? So I don't like that. So swords, however, life, yeah, well, I wasn't gonna probably kill you with life anyways, and you'll know when I kill you, and it's not through damage. So and even then in aggro decks, I still run swords to plowshares. So like it goes in anything that if it plays white, I'm jamming that card. It's just too good. It's too good. I think that there's just way too many things that need to be answered as creatures get better, and there's nothing like a good, cheap 1-mana removal that does not give an opponent a resource.
And it exiles. Like, exiling is actually huge because so many decks have access to great graveyard recursion. Like, every single black deck, for example, but also like white decks too. Like anything that can mean Sun Titan back, you know. Like if you're really to get rid of that Esper Sentinel because like Seth is on at the table and he's going to just like never pay for it, you know. Like you got to make sure that it can't be just like Sun Titan back, you know.
The real value of playing this cheaper removal, Richard, is it leaves you the mana left over to pay the one.
You can pay the one very easily.
Right.
You can pay the one.
If you literally had a generous gift, you could just remove the Ristic Study, right? I don't know. I play like very little spot removal. Like I play 0 to 2 spot removal. And Swords doesn't make the cut because we have other S tier cards on the list that I will play above it. But I'm not saying it's trash, right? It's a B still. It's like still usable. But
it's trash for Swords. I don't know. I feel like
it's
personally
not trash,
offended
right?
by
I'm saying it's a B. It's like still a good card, but it's I wouldn't put it in every deck. Like you just don't want, like, I don't want to go down a card and remove something and then like just sit there empty-handed, right? Like I'd rather be winning the game, you know, not playing spot removal, removing the one thing that prevents me from winning, which is typically not a creature. Right, you can, you know, it's typically maybe like, oh, there's an ensnaring bridge I need to kill, right? Or there is a lightning greaves on something. Giant Magistrate, but you know,
that's why that card lives, right? Because you don't kill it. That's
Richard doesn't believe.
Sweepers take care of it. There are other ways to deal with it, right? You need it to be versatile. Anyway, I'm willing to die on this hill, but I don't want this to be the podcast. So next card.
I don't want to fall on that sword.
Okay,
well, I'm falling on the sword. I'm not putting swords in my deck. I'm not putting swords in my deck. Check the deck list.
Actually.
All right, next card on our list. We have Swords Part 2. Path to Exile, literally the same exact card, except rather than letting your opponent gain life, they get to search out a basic land and put it into play tapped. So rating-wise, I have this as an A. Mostly because it's a little worse than Swords. Like I mentioned, I like to play 1 to 2 of these effects in most decks. If it's 1, it's Swords and Path doesn't get played. If I'm playing like mono white or something and I want another one of these effects, then Path is the next one up as far as single targeted creature removal. Giving an opponent, I think, a land is definitely way more of a drawback than giving the opponent life. Maybe I could see a little bit of Richard's argument about like if I'm super aggressive, maybe the land is actually, you know, more or less of a drawback if you're trying to be super aggro. But in most of the dirtily decks I play, giving the opponent an extra land is definitely way more painful than giving them, you know, 4 life, 5 life, 10 life, whatever it ends up being.
So we have the perfect scale here, right? So Seth went down to an A, Tomer went down to a B, Krim went down to a C, and I went up to an A. So I think it's an advantage. Seth is like, it's slightly bad. Tomer's like, it's really bad. Krim is like, never on my watch.
Whoa.
Like on the scale of giving land. Because the only difference between these two cards is land and life, right?
So
yeah.
I will never give you another land. I will never give you not unless I don't think this card's bad.
No. I meant like the trade-off of giving a land versus giving life, right? Yeah. Because that's the only difference between these two cards. Like otherwise, our ratings should be identical, right?
Well, so I actually think this card is actually better than Swords to Plowshares in very specific decks. And the one that's very specific that I'm have in mind is what Richard touched upon is when you're in a white focused deck, like mostly mono white or like Boros or stuff like that, you're going to be running a lot of these land deficit cards that need help turning on. So like Land Tax is one of the best white cards ever printed. Night of the White Orchids, a fantastic, basically white rampant growth. There's a couple other ones that I'm thinking. Cartographer's Hawk is one of them too, but it's freaking terrible. I would never even run it in any situation. But there's like a couple of these land deficit cards. There's like a new one, Archaeomancer's Map. There's a bunch that are actually really, really good. However, they have this nasty habit. Like they're all based on an opponent having more lands than you, but they all have this nasty habit of like catching you up in terms of lands, and then they literally turn each other off. So like if you ramp too much with these cards, you no longer your other cards no longer function, which is I think bad design. But Path to Exile actually is a way to guarantee that those cards keep working. So you actually kind of turn that disadvantage into an advantage. And I actually prefer Path to Exile more in than Swords to Plowshares in those particular decks. And I also think it's valid in a landfall deck. Like if you're going 4-color on math, for example, I think Path to Exile is better than Swords to Plowshares because another landfall trigger at instant speed. And also if you're in like a mono white tokens deck, like Adeline, for example, I love Adeline so much. But like turning one of those tokens into like half cost instant speed rampant growth is like really legit. So there's a lot of situations where Path to Exile is better, but in a generic deck, no. Swords to Plowshares is so much better. It's just like in tokens, landfall, and mono white, I really like Path to Exile, but swords is just so good. Like I don't know, in a generic deck.
I don't think it's even good in those decks because as long as there's a green player at your table, you'll never have to worry about being they'll always have more lands than you. I've never found like playing those cards and having a green player at the pod, I've never found myself lacking like ways to like turn those cards on. And Path to Exile, as you could see, it's like there's a steep drop off for me. My one creature removal is going to be swords and then like literally just anything else almost. Oftentimes I will not play Path to Exile, and I love Path to Exile. That's a card that I will play religiously in like a 60 card format. Well, maybe not anymore, which is also sad, but like yeah, because but the thing here is I in Commander I just don't see me playing this card ever, and if I'm playing it, it's because it's budget. I got the cool full art promo or some like wild artworks or something like that. Otherwise I'm just not playing it. This is close to, it's not a D for me because I do play it occasionally, but it may be in mono white because, you know, I do need that second cheap 1 mana removal, but otherwise this is filler. This is a filler card for me.
Ironically, I hate Path to Exile in 60 card formats. Like I will actively like not play white because I don't want to play this trash card. But like I said, I agree with Tomer. It's good in white decks. It doesn't actually make the cut most of the time for me, even though I put it as A, because if I'm only playing 0 to 2 spot removal, those are S's. But I think it's good. I think Tomer and I agree, but he somehow lands at a B, like Secret Rendezvous. Like he agrees on all the points. I feel like you're playing any of that white ramp, right? Any of that white ramp, which I think you have to be playing if you have white in your deck. You need this card. So
look, if I'm in a 5-color deck and it's not landfall, I'm not putting Path to Exile in, but I am putting Swords to Plowshares in, and I think that's the main difference. What's a 5-color deck?
No, but that's a 5-color deck. Like, what if like a 2-color deck or a 3-color white deck? Would you be playing this?
If it's a monocolor deck, am I in green? Is it a Selesnya?
Like clear yes.
Is it Selesnya? Because I have a Boros deck that runs, you know, a lot of the land deficit cards, and I run.
Let's say Azorius. So obviously anything with green, you would play like real green ramp, right? Because that's just far superior to everything. But like, you know, Azorius or Boros, yes.
There's all right, you know, maybe I'll put it as an A. All right, you're right. All right, Richard.
That's most scenarios.
Large percent of the decks. All right, you got me. We got it.
You're all making this sound like a Rambit growth, and I can count the number of times that I've seen someone path their own creature in ramp in one of our Commander games on like one finger. I don't even know one hand. Like it doesn't seem like something that actually comes up all that often. Like if,
I don't
if
think
it's
I've ever
really
seen
that
it.
good,
I'm
as
the
this,
only one
like,
that plays
rampant
white
goes,
Seth,
why,
and I don't
why
play
aren't we seeing this
spot
more
removal.
often?
But you know how many times I played the terrible white ramp and I couldn't ramp because I was ahead on lands? A lot, actually.
That's true.
Crim memes
That
on
is-
it, but it
that is
happens
true.
a lot to me.
That does.
That's why I'm like, I'm
I
all
have
in the
seen that.
Tomer, like Lotus Field, Path to Exile plan because
Lotus Field is one of the best lands in mono white. I will stand by it until the end of
I agree.
times.
I agree.
Why?
All right. Enough about this one mana removal. What's up? Who's next?
All right,
All right.
Karim, what do you got for us?
So up next we have Beast Within, which is in 41% of decks according to EDHREC. And I mean, it's just a 3/3. I mean, it's a green spell, 2 and a green, and you blow up any permanent, and you give that person a 3/3. Now, I rate this at an A. I think this is now my issue with it is that it is 3 mana. Right, and I do like it in three, like as a 3 mana removal spell. It does hit anything, like so, like in green specifically. I think that's pretty nice. So I think it's almost an auto include, except like this is like for me, I shift between A and B or A and S here because I feel like almost like most of the time there's just better things than spot removal in green. Like in green, like instead of playing this, I can probably just play, I don't know, like a Bane of Progress or something, right? And I'm not looking to blow up a ton of lands, and if I am, I'm just gonna use like probably like Ghost Quarter or something like that, which I could reoccur. Green has more utility outside of Beast Within. I don't think it needs spot removal. So like instead of removing something, I'm just gonna keep putting better threats. Because green has all the threats. So if I'm playing green, I will just front load my deck with threats, not be the person trying to answer anything. I'm going to be the person that's ramping and just forcing you to answer them. And it's not going to matter because it's all redundant. It's green, it's all same power level bombs, and I'm just going to keep jamming them.
Wait, so
Green
you're
is
playing,
nonsense.
Literally
This is beneath
zero
me.
You'd play literally 0 removal spells if you were playing a green deck? None.
If I'm like most of the time, if I'm playing a green deck that isn't like a meme deck, I will probably just play some removal, but like most of the time, probably not. I'm just going to go hard on making you answer my stuff.
In a weird, twisted sense, like in all of my decks. That's why I play no removal. But I do play like 1 or 2 to keep it sane. And that 1 or 2 is Beast Within. Hence it's S for me. But yeah, you should play other cards than spot removal. But if you are going to play spot removal, it's got to be Beast Within.
Every Commander Clash, someone plays Drannith Magistrate, and the whole table says, "Oh, play removal, play more removal." And now we're doing a podcast, and we're saying, "Don't play."
This explains so
removal.
much on why Richard hates
don't
Drannith
play
Magistrate
any-
so much. He's like, I don't believe in spot removal, but also
I personally have no
Drannith
issue with
Magistrate
it. I'm just
is the
saying
saltiest
for the
card.
general casual EDH crowd, my response is you just chill out and you wrath the board, right? Like I'm not gonna fire off a Beast Within on a Drannith Magistrate unless I'm like trying to combo off with my commander, right? Like
But
you do
you'd rather
not
like
want to
onto inversion a single Drannith Magistrate as cast your
Yes.
commander as opposed to just like pay 2 mana to destroy it.
100%. I would not sword the Drannith Magistrate, right? Unless I'm literally dying on the spot. I would not be wasting my precious swords on a Drannith Magistrate, right? So no, I would not.
I love Beast Within. I have it as easy S tier. This is another card that if I'm building a 5-color deck and have very limited slots, this is going to be there because hitting anything at instant speed for 3 mana that's exactly what you want in Commander. Because Commander is a format where you got powerful artifacts, you got powerful enchantments, you have powerful lands that need to be dealt with, and this gets rid of anyone. And in Commander, when you start with 40 life and you have all these big things and you have a Commander, a 3/3 is nothing. Sometimes in 60 card formats, a 3/3 actually is like a threat that could end up being a problem, but in Commander, giving a person a single 3/3 token most of the time is negligible. It's really not a big deal. So I think this is maybe the best removal spell in Commander, like the very tip top of the S tier for me.
I put it also as an S. I agree with Seth. Like the flexibility here is kind of insane. They can deal with any permanent. It's 3 mana, so you might not always have 3 mana up to like respond instantly to something. But you know, like the fact that hits literally every single permanent, not only is it like absolutely insane in green, because green just doesn't have a lot of ways of dealing with creatures, for example. Like,
Yeah, it does.
I mean, it does in the sense like
It's
you can
green.
fight it, for example.
The fight
But,
is
like,
significantly worse, right?
Yeah, but like like fighting means you still need a creature on the battlefield, and the creature needs to be as big or bigger than the target you want to fight. So there is a hoop that you have to jump through. It's not the hugest hoop for a green deck, but there is a hoop. Like, let's say your board got wiped, and then somebody plays a must answer threat. Beast Within's going to deal with it, whereas you'd have to be like, all right, let me play my creature, let me fight first. And this is at instant speed. And what I also really like is that it can hit lands, because it can hit any permanent, right? I'm double checking actually right now.
It does. It hits any permanent.
You can kill flipped Dousing Dagger with it.
So
you can also make a blocker too. You can actually hit one of your things to make a blocker. You can trigger death triggers on your stuff if you really wanted. Like, it's just so versatile. It's insane.
But yeah, also as we keep getting more crazy lands, having like this Swiss Army knife where it's like, all right, I can deal with your Field of the Dead with the same thing that it can also deal with a creature, which they also can deal with an enchantment or a planeswalker and everything. I think is kind of insane utility. And like, I put this lower before compared to something Orzhov answers. Like, am I going to put this in like a 4-color deck, a 5-color deck? I actually will kind of sometimes. And this is like kind of insane in 2-color decks, 3-color decks. Also mono green. Like, if you're not putting this in a mono green deck, I don't know what to say. Like, you gotta. Like, it's so good. I don't think I've ever played a mono green deck without it. So this card is an S.
Yeah, like, see, the thing is, it makes it sound like I don't think this card is good. This card is good. And
give it an A. It's very good.
Yeah, like, it's still good. I just don't know
put
if
it
it's
in
an
every
auto
single
include.
deck.
Yeah, so, like, and again, I think that instead of just playing this to remove an artifact, I just play Bane of Progress. That's like an S, and it's a body, right? So in green, I will always play something that is attached to a body.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, we'll move on to a card that's basically a color-shifted Beast Within. This is Generous Gift, and very much like Beast Within, this is 2 and a white this time for an instant that says destroy target permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 green elephant creature token. I think this card is a little bit better only because it makes an elephant token, and I think elephant tokens are strictly superior to beast tokens.
I actually think this card is slightly just like worse than Beast Within, a decent amount actually, but it's still a strong A because I think white has so many things that can answer like all the threats like you had mentioned, Tomer. And like, instead of answering a land with this, I would just probably mass land destruction instead. But like the thing here, but no, like I generally think that this card is still strong. It's still pretty powerful. I'm putting it in most of my decks if I'm playing white. Like mono white, I'm definitely putting it in there, right? I think this is probably better than Swords, or not Swords, Path. Like it is better than Path. So I will put this over that. But I do think that white does not need the Generous Gift card as much as probably green needs Beast with it.
Put Path at C, so I really hope it's better.
yeah.
But I was like, wait a minute, it's better than Path, but not worth the soul. Like, what? Yeah. I mean, it's the exact same card. The colors don't matter. You would play both. If I'm playing Selesnya, I'm playing both. If I'm playing 5C, I'm playing both. So it doesn't really matter. Next up, we have Chaos Warp. Same shtick, almost. So 3 mana, instant at red. It's a permanent, and they shuffle into their library. They reveal the top card of the library and puts it onto the battlefield. So a little random element there, but it hits anything, but it also shuffles back. I have it as S. Seth has it at A. Krim has it as A. Tomer has it at C. To me, it's the same as Beast Within and Generous Gift. It's like literally the same, but the red version. Yes, there's some slight differences, and maybe you flip an Eldrazi off the top, but like that's very rare. But yeah, so to me, it's the same. So Seth and Krim, what do you guys think?
So my A ranking, it is similar, but I don't think it's the same. I think the downside is a lot higher. A 3/3 ain't nothing in Commander. You never know what's going off the top of your opponent's deck, and sure, it's probably not going to be an Eldrazi, but even a random 3-drop or a 5-drop or an Eternal Witness, that's, a pretty big deal to give your opponent for free. That said, I like it a lot in mono red decks and some other red color combination decks that struggle with removing things, like isn't great at getting certain permanents, like artifacts or enchantments off the battlefield. So I feel like that's where Chaos Warp shines. So great in like mono red decks, some 2-color decks, but beyond that, I'm playing Generous Gift or I'm playing the Beast Within or whatever in this slot.
Yeah, I mean, like, this card I think is strictly worse than the previous two, but I think it surpasses them in one department, the fun department. The random element is hilarious, and I love that. So I'll often play this because I think it's way more fun than just, it's a 3/3. I think the thrill of a blind flip in a red deck is hilarious. As I say this, I won't give you a land, but this might give you a land. But like, I don't know. I think this card though is strictly worse than the previous two. But Chaos Warp is still decent, just like Seth had mentioned. I play it in my Grixis deck sometimes because I need to answer enchantments. So,
I hate this card. I hate this card so much.
Why?
Hate it so much.
You have a C. So, how is this a C?
All right, so I will acknowledge that this is a good card. It is very similar to Beast Within and Generous Gift. It's the same cost. It's instant speed, and it deals with any permanent, which, again, is literally the exact same as Beast Within and Generous Gift. And I also concede that red has more difficulties dealing with, creatures at low cost, I guess, creatures and enchantments and maybe planeswalkers, So it makes sense that this card is good in particular decks. But I will tell you that my experience with this card has burned me so many times. I have flipped Ugins. I have given people Field of the Dead. I have given people Mirari's Wake. It just hurts. Every single time I think about every single time I cast this card, it hurts. It's kind of like Gamble. Like, I acknowledge that Gamble is a good card. However, the random element keeps burning me that I'm not going to play it unless I have to. I have to. Maybe I'll put it in a red deck as a concession that I need to have a response to enchantments. Maybe. And I think that the random factor is funny in Commander Clash because I'm going to cast it and it's going to burn and blow up in my face and then the viewers can laugh. But you know what? In my personal decks, not going to run it. You have to force me to run this card because every single time I have the worst luck with this card. I hate the random cards. In Gamble, same thing. Good card. In theory, great card. Every single time I get burned. I'll Chaos Swap my own thing. I'll hit like a rampant growth.
What if you drew them into their other finisher? Like, if you're Chaos Warping something, it's probably the best card in their deck, because otherwise, why are you Chaos Warping it, right? And what are the odds that off the top comes another one, right? Like,
what are the odds?
What if you Arcane Denial them into their bomb, right?
What are the odds? Yeah.
There's a very low chance of it happening.
I agree with you that it's a good card. I agree with you that it's a low chance of it happening, but I get burned every single time, Richard. So I'm not going to run it.
Arcane Denial? Oh, maybe you can't tell you get burnt by Arcane Denial because it goes in their hand. They have 6 cards. They could have had that bomb already. But this one is like in your face, like onto the battlefield.
I hate it.
Good sir.
You're trying to make me concede that it's a good card. It is a good card. I still won't run it. This is my tier list. I put it as a C. I'll only run it because I have to.
I mean,
I have to, Richard.
When you think about it, though, like a commander deck is going to be 50% mana, like lands and mana rocks most of the time. So like even just that, you're 50-50 that you're going to not really do anything. And then like spells don't do anything either, right? If your opponent reveals a non-permanent. So it seems like mathematically like 75% of the time this should be good.
I agree with you.
You're just like super unlucky then, I guess. So you don't even play this in mono red, like in your personal decks, like to that?
No.
Even in mono. Wow.
No.
I'd
rather like run Ugin or something if I really have to deal with enchantment. It's like I just don't wanna. I don't want to anymore, Seth. I did. I used to run this in all my red decks. And
what
then
did you flip that hurt you so bad?
I don't know.
What was flipped off the top such that this card could never be played again?
Basically, any bomb you can think of throughout the years, I've flipped into. Like Consecrated Sphinx, you got it. Just like Mirari's Wake, you got it. Ugin, yep, you got it. Sure, why not?
I have flipped into the same spell that I removed.
Do you want I'll Chaos Swap myself and I'll hit like a freaking Painful Truce or something and it just fizzles and I just cry in my corner. I just hate this card. I'm sorry. I acknowledge it's a good card. We'll move on.
Next up, we have a card that's kind of a cross between Swords to Plowshares a little bit, or Path to Exile a little bit like a Beast Within. That's Assassin's Trophy. 2 mana, Golgari instant, blow up any permanent an opponent controls, and they get to search for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield. Notably comes into play untapped. Notably, the reason that Richard really liked Path to Exile doesn't work with Assassin's Trophy because you can't target your own stuff, but still 2 mana, any permanent your opponent controls. I have this one as a S tier, along with Richard, along with Krim. Tomer.
Hi.
How did Assassin's Trophy hurt you? What basic did your opponent flip into that makes you not play this commander
revealed an
all-star?
open island.
He's
I
only
hate
playing Assassin's
islands.
Trophies against landfall decks. You're like, oh no, I just made 8 Baylot tokens.
Okay, so real talk, I don't think I've ever ran Assassin's Trophy in any of my decks. I forget that this card exists, and when I look at it, I'm like, doesn't Golgari have better options than this? Like, why would I run this over like Beast Within? You know, like,
Isn't this just straight up better than Beast
is
Within if
better
you're
than
already
Beast
in
Within.
Golgari?
I would much rather give them a 3/3 creature and pay 1 more mana for it than let them ramp. Krim understands, no? Krim put this
No.
in S though. What's going on?
He's okay in
So-
this case of giving them.
This one I'm okay because this one's 2 mana. It gives them a land, yes, but it's 2 mana and it answers anything.
Path is 1 mana though, and it exiles.
But it only exiles a creature,
Also, Beast Within's 3 mana and exiles anything.
destroys.
No, it doesn't exile.
Yeah.
Or destroys anything, yeah.
And I do despise the 3/3. You see, like the 3 because I never have creatures, so I never have anything to block it, and I'm always just like, man, this 3. I've died many times to a 3/3 that I have given people. So, and like Assassin's Trophy in this situation, I'm okay with giving them a land because I kill anything with it, and it's 2 mana. That's so efficient. And in a Golgari deck, you know, like I'm probably not as rampy as I am in green. Or I mean, I'm still rampy, but like I'm not as probably focused on being aggressive unless I'm mono green.
I
still
pretty
run
much
it
always
ever.
play this. If I'm in the colors, I'm just always gonna play it. Like I
Yeah.
think it's alongside Beast Within. Like I think that's number 1 and number 2 in my Golgari deck. Those are probably the first 2 removal spells I put in. Honestly,
2 mana. It's huge. 2 and 3 mana are
it's
way
better.
different.
It's better Beast Within. But
Yeah,
it's just
that's
Golgari,
maybe.
right? So you
Is
see it
it?
less often, right? You see it less often because it's Golgari, and you need to have Golgari exactly in your deck. But it's just 2 mana to remove anything, and they get a land, right?
They get a
I'm-
land. I don't want to.
I might put Beast Within slightly ahead of it actually.
Yeah, okay,
Just-
okay, slightly
But
ahead.
they're very close to each other. Yeah,
Still
same,
S.
same tier. Yeah.
You gotta give me a reason. Like, am I playing like Landfall Week on Commander Clash? Okay, better take this out, right? But other than
I don't
that,
know. Like when I'm in Golgari, like the first spot removal I go for is usually like I put in Deadly Rollick. I'll put in Beast Within, and then like a Nature's Claim if I want to deal with like enchantments and artifacts. Like this never even crosses my mind as something to add to the deck.
okay,
I feel
but
like for me,
will it cross
like,
your mind now?
yeah.
I mean,
Maybe
I'll
you
put
forgot
it as
this
a
card
B.
existed.
I'll put it as a B. I don't really run it as ever, but maybe I guess it's kind of better than I thought it would be. Oh, it's a B. It's a B. It's fine.
I feel like if you're playing removal that only kills one thing in Commander, you really want it to kill anything. That's what
Yeah.
I put the highest value on out of all these removal spells. So, and Assassin's Trophy does it.
It does hit lands too. I respect it. You
Unless
convinced
it's
me. I'll
cheap.
switch it to a B. I'll switch it to
Like
a
as in like
solid B.
mana costs. Mana cost is a big
Yeah.
thing to me. So
I mean, this is both though. This is cheap and
Yeah.
it's everything.
exactly. That's why I love this card.
All right, we'll move on. Krim, what do you got for us for the next one?
So it's going to be the next one I actually play a lot. It's Anguished Unmaking in 28% of decks. Richard's got it rated at an A. I've got it at an S. So does Seth, and so does Tomer. This is just pay 3 mana, exile any non-land permanent, and you lose 3 life. The difference here between like, well, why is Beast Within and all that stuff, 3 mana, why is that lower than this? And it's because I would rather lose the life. And then on top of that, the fact that I can exile, that's pretty awesome, right? Like, so like it's essentially what is 3 life for a one-time thing, as opposed to leaving somebody with a 3/3 body or anything like that. I don't want to deal with that. And
you don't play creatures, so
yeah, exactly. I can't block it, right? So the thing here is, I want Anguished Unmaking because it exiles anything, and exile is way different to me than destroy. I value exile just absurdly high, and if it's exile anything, I love that. That is not a land.
Yeah. I mean, top tier Orzhov removal. I think this is like the number one removal spell if I'm in an Orzhov deck. I think this is the first one that goes in.
Anything in black and white, I'm always looking to add this card, probably.
Me, Seth, and Krim all agree that this is an S, and for all the same reasons, I think. But Richard has it as an A.
I agree with you guys.
Why?
It's pretty close. I don't know if it's... So I play Generous Gift above Anguished Unmaking. I think paying 3 life matters more than giving them a token. Unlike Krim, I actually have creatures, so like your creatures are giving the elephants irrelevant. So it's pretty close for me, but I think the life matters. The fact that it's 2 colors. I don't auto jam it in all my decks, but yeah, it is pretty good for all the reasons. Like if I like Beast Within, Generous Gift, this is an exile effect, right? It's just less versatile because you have to play Orzhov, but I think it's a pretty good card. You guys can convince me I don't know, it's pretty close. But I still like Generous Gift over it, though. I wouldn't play it over Generous Gift in Orzhov colors.
But the problem is with so many things getting indestructible and like whatnot, right? Like
that is true.
You like everything now has indestructible. Like obviously, like the Titan of a card, Avacyn's Memorial or whatever. You know what I mean? That card, that everybody plays. I'm kidding. That no one plays that. But yeah, like the I do think that genuinely a lot of things have indestructible now, and like people have lots of ways to give indestructible. So I think the exile is just now where you have to be in Commander.
I honestly
Especially
think
Chroma's Vengeance, all these new cards they're printing to give. Or Chroma's Will, sorry.
Chroma's Will would get around it either way, though, because of protection.
I feel like that's true. I feel like exiling is important, but not so much because of indestructible. Like that is a bonus, but for me, it's a recursion. Like for me, that's the biggest one because we've seen that in so many of our games where someone kills your thing and it's no sweat. No one really cares. Like, oh, whatever, I'll get it back eventually. But when you exile someone's stuff, that's when the tears start flowing and the game plan falls apart because it's a lot harder to actually get your card back from exile.
Yeah, I put this at my, if I'm in Orzhov colors, this is the first spot removal I'm going to add into the deck because the stopping recursion is huge, but also just like if an opponent is running a pretty scary commander that is indestructible, like Perforos, God of the Forge, you gotta have something to get rid of it. It's an indestructible enchantment, so gotta get rid of it. I think Coma, I don't know if Coma gives itself hexproof, but I know it gives itself indestructible, and I know that's super annoying. Well, we'll move on. We'll go to the baby Anguished Unmaking. This is a card that I very much love to death. This is D-Spark. It's a white and a black, so Orzhov colors, for an instant that says exile target permanent with mana value 4 or greater. So unlike Anguished Unmaking, this can only hit things mana value 4 or greater, but it costs 1 less, and you don't lose any life when you're casting it. Oh boy, do I love this card! I put it. It's like for me as a person who budget brews a lot. Like Anguished Unmaking, I keep looking at the price. I keep steadily rising. It's like, oh no, it's $5. It's like, oh no, please reprint, please reprint. D-Spark has been where I've been at for basically any Orzhov deck. I've been putting in all my budget decks, and then slowly I've been incorporating it as like my secondary Anguished Unmaking because it has like very much exact same flexibility. Like yes, it doesn't hit everything, which is a little bit annoying. It won't hit the Rhystic Study, it won't hit the Esper Sentinel, it won't hit the Draenith Magistrate, but for most of the big threats, it's going to get rid of it, and it's at 2 mana, and you don't lose any life for it. So it's pretty easy to keep up to the 2 mana for it. It gets rid of basically everything that you need to. And I really like it. It's neat. It's less than $1, so budget win. Yeah, easy A.
I feel like this is a card I was kind of excited about when it first came out, but I feel like it keeps getting worse and worse. I feel like we keep getting more commander sets, we keep getting more efficient staples in the format, and I feel like 4 greater is just, it doesn't do enough anymore. Like I feel like you don't hit a high enough percentage of cards, especially when you also consider how many similar cards we have. We have Anguished, Unmaking, we got Utter End, we got Vanquished, whatever that's in Standard, or Vanishing Verse that's in Standard, we got Rite of Oblivion. There's like a million options for these Orzhov Exile spells now, and I don't know, why would I play one that doesn't hit like 50% or 75% of the cards that people play in their decks when I could play one that does hit all of it for 1 more mana or even the same amount of mana?
Seth pretty much nails it right there, right? Like it is just a card that continues to slide down the rankings for me. It's not like the worst thing I've ever seen, but like it's just okay. And that's just because cards are just getting better, and they'll, like, for the same mana cost, they will actually answer anything.
I agree with all of you. Well, except Tomer. D, trash, unplayable. Like, I don't know why you want conditional. It's not worth saving 1 mana for the conditional aspect of it, right? And that condition is very big. Like, a lot of things, CMC 3 and under, will kill you, or a combo piece or whatever in Commander. So, like, this is, like, way worse than holding a swords when someone plays like an enchantment to kill you, right? Because like, you could have just like played more legit removal. So I don't like this card at all. Even as like, there's gotta be better budget options, Tomer. Is there really no like better budget option?
I've had good experiences with it. Like the fact that it doesn't hit Rhystic Study is probably the biggest strike against it for me. If it doesn't hit Rhystic Study, then I'm going to feel real bad.
Or any 3 mana combo creature, right? Like,
it's just mostly Rhystic Study, I'll be honest. Like, you can combo kill me, and that's fine, good beats. But if there's a Rhystic Study on the battlefield and I can't deal with it, I'll be really upset. Maybe it's
Vanishing Verse deals with.
No, you know what? I'm sticking to my guns. It's an A. I like it a lot.
I better see this in every game, but you know what? I won't see it because you're going to hold it in hand while you die to a 3 CFC creature.
All right, I'll give it a B. All right, Richard.
Do you actually play in all your decks, though?
It's a large percentage of my decks.
Okay. Tomer does play it a lot. Really
as long as you're consistent and you know.
I'm going to keep it as an A. You know what? I'm sticking to my values as I change it back and forth. All right, we'll move on. Richard, what do you got for us?
All right. Next up, we have Utter End, which is basically 4 mana Orzhov, instant, exile target, non-land permanent. So, like, 1 more mana than Anguished Unmaking, but you don't lose the life. I have it as a C. It's like, okay, I guess. Like, if you have nothing going on, you can put it in your deck, but 4 mana to remove something is a lot. Like, there's a lot, like, your Orzhov, which means you have white, which means you have Generous Gift. So I just play that.
And you have Anguished Unmaking.
Yeah, so you have Anguished Unmaking too.
And D-Spark.
Not that one. This is what you upgrade your D-Spark into.
Oof.
So Tomer and Richard don't really like this card, but Krim and I both have it as A, and I see this as the next step down below Anguished Unmaking. If I'm playing Orzhov, Generous Gift, Anguished Unmaking, Utter End, those are 3 removal spells that show up in my deck pretty often. 4 mana is a little more than I want to pay to any non-land permanent. Like, that is the drawback. And again, I do agree this is kind of like sliding down a little bit just as we get more and more cheaper options in the format. Also worth pointing out, Tomer mentioned Anguished Unmaking being a little expensive. This one's only $1. So if you want to play a budget Anguished Unmaking, you're paying 1 extra mana. You're not losing 3 life, and this card is bulk rare prices. So, D-Spark, please.
D-Spark is half the price. I'm not spending 4 mana for a targeted removal spell. I'm sorry. That's just too much. It's way too much. Like, I like the flexibility. It's literally an Anguished Unmaking, but the difference between 3 and 4 mana is enormous, and the difference between 4 and 2 mana is huge.
But
think about that. D-Spark is a half price Utter End.
I am the person that will usually care about something being 1 more mana, right? I've talked about how everything being 1 more mana is very much so expensive. But once again, I mean, like, this is actually one that was like sliding towards a B, in between a B and an A for me. But it is still an exile effect, and I value the exile so much. Like, Destroy, I don't value it enough. And I don't give you a 3/3, so I don't need to block anything. So this is great. I think this is a budget option, and once again, exile. If there's anything, I just don't want you to ever have that card again.
All right, fair enough.
Have we ever seen Utter End on Commander Clash? That's my question.
Yes.
It's definitely been in some of my decks.
Have we?
It's definitely been in some
I've
of my
used
decks.
to run it, but like it really feels like 2011 Magic as opposed to like 2021 Magic to me. 4 mana for.
Well,
exile.
speaking of 2011 Magic, next on our list, we have Terminate. 1 red, 1 black, instant speed, destroy a creature. Does it say it can't be regenerated?
Yeah,
it does
Can't
say
be
it cannot be
regenerated.
regenerated. I don't know if
Because
that's
it's
old
dunk on
school
Richard's
days.
skeletons.
Skeletons,
Yeah.
once again, hosed.
Always held back by these premium removal spells.
Terminate.
So rating wise, no one seems to like this one. It's in 20% of decks
20%.
according to EDHREC, but we got a D, a D, a D, and then Tomer a little bit higher on it with a C. I don't know. So this card to me, it only kills a creature. I like to have more flexibility than that. Unlike Swords of Plowshares, it is 2 mana, and the difference between 1 and 2 is big enough to make me not really like Terminate. So, and if you're in red and black, you just got a lot of different flexible options. You got a lot of Wrath options. So I tend to not play Terminate, even though, I don't know. I don't think it's the worst card. I can see an argument for having it be a C as like a filler level budget card, but yeah. So what do you guys think?
I often don't ever play this. In black and red, you just have better answers. Just better answers that do more, that hit more, and then on top of that, some of them even exile. So, yeah.
There's black and red cards that exile.
There's one.
You got
There's one from the
Chaos Warp.
Prosper deck.
Oh,
Remember,
I guess
there's
Chaos
like
Warp. Yeah.
well, there's
Shuffle it in.
Chaos Orb doesn't exile. It just shuffles in.
well,
But there's like one. There's like 4 mana.
Yep.
I don't know.
It's
I
from
forget the name
the
of it.
D&D precon.
You exile and then you can cast it or something.
Yep.
Afterwards, which is pretty cool. Hurl through hell, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I forgot the name, but that card is cool.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have anything to add to this, Tomer? Do you
It's just
actually-
filler. Like
it's just filler. Yeah.
Honestly, it's like if I'm in a budget Rakdos deck, maybe I run it, but usually not because I'll put in like Price of Fame or something else over it. But like, it's not the worst. Anyway, we'll move on to something that's a little bit more flexible, I guess. Who is it on?
All right.
Crim.
It's
Crim.
so
Yeah.
it is. Okay, well, a spell that I will usually play sometimes, actually. Bedevil, 15% of decks. Richard's got it at a C. Seth and I've got it at a B, and Tomer's got it at a C. This just destroys an artifact creature or a planeswalker. It's a B. I mean, once again, like I wish it wasn't destroy, but like it's fine because you do need to kill things that stop your planeswalkers, like the Immortal Sun, and artifacts are always a thing that need to be removed. It is still 3 mana. The thing that's a little awkward is that its mana cost is very, very tight. It's black, red, so that can kind of be a detractor sometimes, unless you have Chromatic Lantern, of course. But the main thing is just this is just okay. It's pretty solid. I don't run it in every deck. It's definitely not an auto include, but it's good in some.
Yeah, I also had it as a B. It's somewhere between a B and a C for me. I think hitting an artifact is a big upside. That's enough of an upside that I would play this over Terminate, even though it costs 1 extra mana. And then every once in a while, hitting a Planeswalker is relevant too. But I value the flexibility over the efficiency, I guess, with the Bedevil versus Terminate.
I basically never play this, even though I have it as a C. It's not like that bad, but it's just hard to cast. I'd rather play Chaos Warp. I'd rather play like a Hagra Mauling or something, right? Like I don't know. Like there's just so many better options, and it's like it's just hard to cast. And you
I
have to
appreciate the flexibility, but we have better removal at budget, and we have better artifact removal, like creature removal at budget and artifact removal at budget. Like, yeah, it does both, but it's like 3 mana and it's double black and red. I just don't really reach out for it. Like, it's a filler card to me.
So the only difference between it and say a Generous Gift is enchantments, right?
Yeah,
Lands,
but also it's
lands.
2 colorless
Lands.
and a
Lands,
1 color,
right? And then mana cost.
Yeah,
But if you were in Rakdos, like the only thing is enchantments. That's the difference. But we've all rated this one super low.
I don't know.
Yeah.
This doesn't run around much.
This is hard. I don't know. I just never, because I guess I have Chaos Warp, and I always just play that instead.
I think
It
I'd
is
rather
weird.
run this over Chaos Warp.
I don't. Well, of course you would, Tomer. I don't know why I don't really play it either, because it doesn't seem like that bad of a card. But I tend to not put it in my decks that much either.
It's always
like
close.
If I want a
think it's always
flexible,
very close.
if I want a flexible artifact removal, spot removal, I'm gonna run Rakdos Charm over it like 9 times out of 10. And then if I want like really efficient creature removal in Rakdos, I'll run like Deadly Rollick, and I'll run like Snuff Outs. Oh, I love Snuff Out so much. 0 mana spells. And then just like the flexibility is nice, but it's 3 mana and it doesn't really deal with enchantments or lands. If it just hit like a land or something, it would be like A+.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. If it hit one more thing, and
Yeah.
I don't know, they'll print this card that hits enchantments at some point. Now that Black gets to kill enchantments, it'll be coming like in
You
another
lose
year
3
or
life
two
or
of
whatever.
Commander Precons. Yeah,
Yeah.
drawback makes it fair.
All right, we're gonna move into the realm of targeted creature removal in blue. Hello, color bend anyone? I don't know anymore. This is Reality Shift. Reality Shift is a 2 mana, 1 and a blue instant to exile target creature, not destroy, exile. Its controller manifests the top card of the library, which means they put the top card of the library onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature. And if it's a creature card, they can turn face up at any time by paying its mana cost. So if you hit a creature, you can just flip it over and by paying its mana cost. Otherwise, you just have a 2/2 creature that will eventually die or whatever. I think this card's pretty solid. Being able to exile a creature in blue, back in the day, it used to be something to be like, oh my goodness, blue's actually destroying creatures, or exiling creatures. That's insane. What a shift in philosophy. Now it's more like you have a bunch of options, but I mean, it's still pretty darn good. Exiling over just destroying means it really hurts like graveyard focused decks, and doing it at instant speed for 2 mana is pretty darn sweet. Yes, your opponents are getting a 2/2, and sometimes they're going to get a creature out of it, but I think that's pretty darn good. 2 mana is more than I like to pay usually. I think there's better options in blue, weirdly enough, for creatures, but yeah, it's a solid beat to me.
Yeah, I mean, B is good in certain decks only, basically,
decks.
or a small percentage of decks. And I think it's a card that's good in mono blue decks, because mono blue isn't that good at dealing with things that are on the battlefield. The only other place where it's kind of sweet is like face down matters style decks, like Kadena or things like that. But in general, like in mono blue, you want a way to deal with creatures. This is one of the like 3 good ways I think that blue has or whatever to like actually kill a creature rather than just bounce it. So if you're in blue, if you're in a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 color deck though, then you get real options from other colors and you don't need this anymore.
Agreed. Yeah.
It's just, I think this is the only card we've agreed on. It's just solid.
Yeah, just straight Bs across the board.
I don't even play this card like ever though. But
I've cast
I
it a
can
few
fault you
times.
for using it, right? Like it's okay, right? It's like fine, serviceable.
I mean, if you're mono blue, or even if you're Simic, I think those are 2 options where I would see a good argument for them.
You
But we have
Cyclonic
something.
Rift, you have capsize. Do kind of
Yeah,
the same
you have
thing.
bounce effects, but
Yeah.
we didn't. We were focusing on stuff that was like, I guess we could have added. No, if we added it, it would be too much. It would be too much. We're focusing on creature removal that can hit other things. Anyway, we're gonna be moving on to something a little bit more contentious. Richard, what do you got for us?
All right, we have Pongify, and it's effective reprint rapid hybridization. So for a single blue instant, destroy target creature. It cannot be regenerated. That creature's controller puts a 3/3 green ape creature token into play. Hybridization does the same thing, but it's a frog.
Frog lizard.
Frog lizard. So single blue, destroy creature only. So not quite Beast Within, but they get a 3/3. So me and Seth have it at B, Crim's at C, Tomer's at A. I think it's the same as Reality Shift. Like, yes, it's 1 less. It destroys instead of exiles, but I don't know. It's like okay removal that I basically never play.
Yeah. Same thing. If you're in mono blue, you need to kill something. This gets the job done. If you're outside of mono blue, then it loses a lot of value because you got other options.
Destroy, clearly an issue for me. But the main thing is, if I'm playing mono blue, why am I using this instead of stealing the creature? So that's why I have it at C. I know that stealing the creature will cost more mana, but I would rather just steal the creature.
How are you going to steal the creature?
And you got to steal it like sorcery speed usually. I feel like there's some value to in your blue deck to be like, oh my god, they cast some pump spells, I'm gonna die to commander damage, like save me, Pongify. So I feel like I don't know. Then
I bounce it, right? then I would rather just tempo play and bounce it, right? So I can bounce or steal. Bounce it long enough till I can steal it.
Bounce it until you can steal it. Plus the 3/3. The 3/3s always get you, Krim. So
the 3/3s are a threat. That I won't steal. But like Entrancing Melody and Lull Mage's whatever from Zendikar Rising, these are all cards that I would play in place of it. Just because, yes, I can maybe destroy this, but I'd rather punish you for playing it by stealing it. So then that way I can get you, right? Like, and I do love getcha cards. So Pongify is just okay. I guess it's like, it dances between a C and a B for me. Like, I think it's like decent, I guess, but I still value Reality Shift significantly higher because of the exiling clause. So I do like that it's got the cheap efficiency of 1 mana, but I just would rather bounce something. So I'd rather play Capsize in this place because that bounces anything, or I'd rather just steal it.
Fair. I think I'm really high on this card. I don't know. I put this as an A because I consider it like kind of up there with Path to Exile, to be honest. Like, it doesn't go in the same deck, obviously. Like, we talked about Path to Exile, about like landfall and land deficit cards and blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of different unique things. But I really value instant speed removal of creatures at 1 mana. I think the difference between 2 and 1 mana is really, really high, especially in decks that aren't draw go. But this one just seems like it's perfect in a bunch of different decks. Like, mono blue is going to be fantastic. I also really like it in Izzet decks because red doesn't really have a lot of instant speed creature removal that's super cheap. Like, they have like, if you have a bunch of snow permanents, you have like Skred, but I don't know how else you're dealing with it at 1 mana. Blue offers that much better than red, I think. So Izzet is pretty good. Simic, I think Simic also can use Pongify and rapid hybridization a lot. So there's a lot of
oversimplify instead.
What?
Just oversimplify instead.
But that's a board wipe. Then that's like 5 mana, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's like 2 mana in Simic, so you're fine. 5 mana is like 2 mana in Simic, so it's fine.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think this is a really good card. It's definitely up there with Path to Exile. And if I'm in a color, if I'm in Azorius, generally speaking, I'm probably going to be going Path to Exile because I'm going to be running, the Night of the White Orchids and the land taxes and whatnot. But if I'm like in Bant or something, then I'd probably focus on Pongify over Path to Exile. So it's a really good A. I'm never upset that I have it in my deck, and I usually run it quite often.
Well, next on our list, we're heading into the world of Commander pre-con cards, and we have Deadly Rollick. So Deadly Rollick, 4 mana, black card, instant, exile a creature, except if you have a commander, you can play it without paying its mana cost. This is a card that I never play, but I have a thing about these cycle of cards, so I just kind of refuse to play them in general, not because they're bad, but because I don't like them. I initially had this as a C, but then I read it again and I realized that it exiles, and that made me bump it up all the way to A, actually. I don't think it's S, because I think it gets significantly worse if you have to spend mana on this. If you have cheap commanders that you're going to get down early in the game and be able to cast this for free, then it probably is the best black creature only removal spell. I mean, exiling is huge. That's something we've talked about throughout this entire podcast. On the other hand, if you're playing big, expensive top end 7-8 mana cards, and you're going to actually likely have to cast this for 4 mana, then I don't think it's worth it. So I don't know. As far as the rest of the rankings, we had a couple of S's from Krim and Tomer, and then Richard, you're where I started out, down at the C. So what do you guys think about this one?
I mean, I feel like anytime I have the opportunity to have a free spell, it's at least worth looking at, right? Even if it means that I have to pay 4 mana for it at some point, potentially. But I think the upside of just having my commander out and then just being freely able to remove something, lure out that, Crim's tapped out, so now it's time to go off or do something, right? Oh, yeah, sure, for sure. And then I'll just exile it instead, right? So I think that there's just too many plays that are too sweet to pass up by not playing this card. And once again, I assume that in most decks, let's say you're in mono black, you're going to have Urborg, you're going to have tons of cheap ways or tons of ways to get your pricier commander out. But for the most part, I feel like every commander deck that has black and should be playing some form of spot removal, this one will usually be free for me. It will usually be free.
I love this card. I think this is a solid ass. I totally agree with Crim. Where, like, if I'm in black and I intend on casting my commander reliably, Deadly Rollick is all upside, baby. Like free mana, 0 mana to exile a creature at instant speed, exile instead of destroy. So it gets around indestructible and recursion. Oh, baby. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, it's really bad if you have to hard cast it. But I mean, like, how many people are high on Hagra mauling, where you're like, oh, if I have to hard cast it as 4, that's still great because it can be a land, right? Well, can't you say similar things about Deadly Rollick, where it's like, yeah, sometimes you have to hard cast it as 4, but it's still acceptable. But sometimes you're casting it for 0.
I can't play it as a land on turn 1. No, I'm so confused.
Where did this one come from? I'm confused.
No, as in like the one side of it being worse or better. Like, okay, maybe that wasn't a good example, but the point is that the upside of this card, the power ceiling of this card is so high, casting it for free.
The average cost is like, say, 2 or something is what Tomer's trying to say. Maybe 1.5, right? And that's very good for this card.
That's a Doom. Yeah, it's like a Doomblade that can hit black creatures and it exiles. And everybody loves Doomblade, so think about that. Hey. Richard, Richard, you're not very high on this.
Nah, I think this card's trash. I never play it. I'll give it a C. Like, I can see why you could play it, but it's not worth it to remove only a creature, right? Like, if I didn't like Swords, I think Swords is significantly better than this card, right? Swords is 1 mana. Yeah. There's no conditionality on it. This one, there's a condition, and having your commander out is a big deal. Like, for Fierce Guardianship, like, you are trying to protect your commander, that makes sense. But for Deadly Rollick, you're just trying to remove something on the board. Like, what are the odds that you have your commander on the battlefield at that exact moment, right? And that it's lived through all of that and all of that, yada, yada. Like, it's very difficult. So I don't like the free aspect. If you're really high on free spells, play Snuff Out, play Slaughter Pact. Like, I don't think those are worth it in your deck either, right? It's just not worth wasting a card, even though you cast it for free, on this spot removal. Especially since black has such powerful sweepers, like you could just, bounce Decree of Pain or something. Like, you just need to not die, right? So just ensure you don't die and then sweep the board and like resurrect the graveyard, draw 8 million cards, whatever, you're in black, right? So I actually never play this card. I don't think you should play it, and it's hard unless there's some combo with your commander, right? Where you get your commander out and for 0 mana you can exile something and then go off. But like, I don't know, you don't need to save that mana.
Isn't this a great way to not die though? Like, if your plane is not dying, how many times have we had our commander on the battlefield, we're tapped out, and then the group is like, hey, let's kill that person before he gets to untap. I know Seth recently had to deal with that situation on Commander Clash. Minor spoiler. If you had a Deadly Rollick in your hands, guess what? You exile the attacking creature and you live. Or, again, like, you're tapped out and you have your creature on the battlefield, and then somebody's being like, all right, I play my combo commander, or I play my combo, whatever combo piece is the creature, and then boom, you're tapped out, but you still have the answer ready. That's why I value it so much. It's like, I like spot removal that costs no mana or costs 1 mana. Like, that's super big for me.
There's arguments for that, but to me, that's like never play into the control player because they can counter something, right? Like, you got to play your game. You got to put shields down at some point, right? If you really think you're going to combo off, then don't tap out, right? Hold your mana up and like get them. But yeah, like for that like 10% chance they might combo off, I'd rather just play like aggressive cards to get something done and then like untap and then use Beast Within to deal with their thing, right? Like, as opposed to waiting the whole game for it. Because what if you play your commander and they wrath the board, and then now you're tapped out, you have no removal, and you have no commander, right? Like, that's a real thing. Your commander doesn't stick around forever, right? And you can't protect it like Fierce Guardianship, right? So there's a cost to dumping your commander out there.
Okay, well, I still think it's amazing.
All right. Wait.
We're gonna.
Snuff Out is interesting because it's a very similar card without the commander aspect of it, right?
Yeah, I snuck this in mid recording because I thought we needed a couple more options here. Snuff Out is one of my favorite, and I totally forgot about it. It's actually not played that much on EDHREC. It's only 2%, but it's like one of my top go-to removal spells in any black focused deck. This is another card similar to Deadly Rollick, where you can either cast it for free or you can cast it for 4 mana. It's a 3 and a black for an instant that says, if you control a swamp, you may pay 4 life rather than pay the spell's mana cost, and you can destroy target non-black creature. It can't be regenerated, so take that, non-black skeletons.
Skeletons
Boom.
again.
Got him. Bottom. But the point is, like, this one doesn't even need your... This one doesn't even need your commander on the battlefield. This one, as long as you have a swamp on the battlefield, you can cast it for 4 life instead of any mana whatsoever. And oh boy, do I love this one. And basically, any mono black deck, it's going instantly in there. Any 2-color black deck, it's going instantly in there. Any 3-color black deck, I'm almost always putting it in there. And then 4 and 5, I just don't have enough swamps to reliably cast it for its alternate cost. But like yeah, you could like tutor up an Urborg or whatever, but I don't want to rely on that, you know. But this card is insane. So I put it as an A, where it's good in a large percentage of decks, but basically just not 4 or 5 color for me. Free removal. Free.
I mean, okay, so I put it as a D. I'm on the far other side of the scale. I can see an argument for it being a C, or maybe a B if you really squint super hard. So basically, it doesn't kill all creatures. It has the non-black restriction, which I think is a pretty big deal in Commander. It costs life, which can be a big deal. I know you start with 40 life, but 4 is a pretty big chunk. That's 10% of your starting life total. And there are going to be scenarios where you go back to what we were talking about with Deadly Rollick, where you're like, you need to save yourself from this attack. You need this free spell. If you're already low enough on life, you might not actually even be able to cast this and save yourself. There's also Deadly Rollick. There's also Slaughter Pack going on. So my argument for bumping up any tiers would be to play it with specific commanders, like Villas, if you're trying to like Death Shadow yourself and you can actually benefit from losing the life, or maybe like Demon Lord Belzenlock, where you want your stuff to be over 4 mana or whatever. But I never play this as just a generic removal spell, even in black, because if there's one thing black has, it's a lot of removal spells, and there's just so many options.
Isn't that a B then? You'd put it in like Villas and stuff?
I don't know. That's like,
give me that B, Seth. Give me that B. Give me that
like
B,
really,
Seth.
really,
Small percentage of decks.
Okay.
Good. Come on.
Your opponent mind slavers you, and all you have is stuff.
All right, C. I'll go up to C. I'll split the difference with you. I'll go
average. All right.
Oh, average. It can't be average. D. Back to D. And when you put the average in there, there's no way.
Krim understands.
I appreciate the free spell again, anytime I have a free spell, I will usually take at least a look at it and probably put it in a good amount of my deck. So Snuff Out's another cool one. So I don't know if I have it like up at an A, but I do like it a lot. So it's just, once again, free removal. There's a freemium to that, and I will always take that.
Because it's free doesn't mean it's good. It's still a card in hand, right?
Free's always good. What do you mean?
No, it costs you a card that you drew. You know how all that precious work you did to draw that extra card? It's now a Snuff Out. Are you pleased with that?
Just run more card draw.
I think it's slightly better than Deadly Rollick, but at the end of the day, it's the same thing, right?
Deadly Rollick.
I'd rather pay 4 life than have my commander on the battlefield, because your commander doesn't stay on the battlefield, right? It's very hard. So this is actually a free spell, right? Chances are you have a swamp, right? So this is actually a free spell. Yes, it doesn't hit black, but it's still single targeted removal that's even more narrow than creature, right? It's non-black creature, and it costs you 4 life. So see, like, I can see why you would play it, but I don't really want to be playing it, and I'd rather play other cards. So see. We got the whole spectrum here, A, B, C, D.
I was hoping I could win somebody over, but okay. That's fine. Seth with the D. I'm just D for disappointed in you, Seth. We'll move on. What do we got?
So,
Richard. Crib.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
up next, we do have a personal favorite of mine, Hagra Mauling in 3% of decks. It's 2 and double black, destroy target creature, but its backside is a tap land that creates a black source. I love this card. I have this rated at an S. Rich has got it at B. Seth's got it at S. Tomer's got it at a B. I mean, as you all know, I auto-include this card. If I am playing black, it's an auto-include. For one very specific reason. There should always be... I love that it's spot removal, and when it isn't spot removal, it can be a land, right? So, just that on its own, and I value that very highly as someone who is often in need of lands. So, the thing here is, like, being able to, like, turn that, like, land into a removal spell when you're flooded... At instant speed, sure, I'll pay the 4 mana. And unless maybe for some odd reason they don't have a non-basic land, then, or they don't have a basic land, then sure, it costs 3 mana.
I mean, it's a MDFC, so of course it's great. I've killed people with the horrible, like, white Cabrias takedowns and stuff. Like, this just actually kills any creature. Like, it's great. And this is one of the ones, like, MDFCs I try to play many of in, like, 1 to 3 color decks. But in 5 color decks, I usually have room for 1 MDFC from each color is usually my technique. This is usually the black one that makes the cut. So,
it's too much.
So I think that makes it an S tier.
How are you putting these? They don't even mana fix, or just tap lands.
Restoration, Amiria's Call, Balagad Recovery, Hagra Mauling, and then Shatterskull Smashing. Those 5, always in. Those are the first 5 cards in.
I just pulled up our old MDFC tier list just to check how we've changed over time. So Seth actually upgraded. He used to be A on Hagra Mauling. I'm exactly the same at B. Krim is exactly the same at S, and Tomer downgraded from A into B. So it's interesting if have we actually changed our mind, or have we become inconsistent? So do you agree with the upgrade into S?
I think so. I think I agree with it, because I think when we initially did the podcast, I was skeptical of playing in 5 color decks, and that's what held me back. But as I played with them more, my current thinking is I still try to play some number of MDFC in 5 color decks, and this is the black one that makes the cut. So I think maybe it's like between an A and an S, but I think that a slight upgrade is actually right.
Is there anything higher than S?
You will never catch me playing this card in a 5 color deck. Absolutely not. Double black and 2 and double black to cast. Deck? 2 and 3 color decks, I'll run it usually. Yeah, it's good. But 4 color, absolutely not. 5 color, absolutely not. Because I don't value a tap lane that doesn't mana fix in 4 and 5, and I don't value a 4 mana removal spell. And the fact that both of them come together, having the flexibility is nice. That gives it a little bit of a bump to like B, but being like bad in both scenarios does not make a good card. So it is a B. I will run it in every single mono black deck. I will run it in 2 color decks. I will run it usually in 3 color decks, but I'm not happy paying 4 mana to spot remove. That's just a thing. Like, I value cheaper effects. And it doesn't mana fix in 4 and 5, so it seems like trash to me in there. But it's very good in the lower color decks.
It blows my mind that this is in 3% of decks according to EDHREC. Like, literally blows my mind. Like, how is that possible? Why do people not realize how good this card? Like 3%?
Because it's a B, Seth.
Well, I don't understand why people don't run more snuff outs, but
so EDHREC is heavily skewed towards precons, people updating their precons. Card accessibility is a real thing. Budget is a real thing. Like, we're like, what's the difference between a $5 card and a $3 card? Like, it's like $2 times 60 cards.
Only $1,
right? Times 60 cards. It adds up, right? You can't just like upgrade your cards by $1 or $2 everywhere. But you know, even though my rating's the same, I've actually come down on MDFCs a little bit. Like, the S tiers are still high, but I've played too many decks with 0 basics because I don't have any room to put basics after putting all the non-basics in. So Hagra Mauling to me is not always worth that slot, right? Like, that tap land does matter. The fact that it's not a basic matters because I like don't actually have any room for basics. So it's still good though. But again, I'm not looking for spot removal effects that much. So I'd rather just play like a Field of the Dead or something. Like if I'm going to use my utility land slot up, I'd rather just play like something else. So it's good, but I don't go nuts with it.
It's fine, but it's not as good as Malakir Birth. That's the true best MDFC in black.
It's not as good as soft consumption.
That's a sword I will fall upon. Soft consumption. Ugh, the memes. All right, whatever. We'll move on to Seth. What do you got for us?
Next up, we have Crib Swap. So Crib Swap is a 2 and a white, and you get a tribal shapeshifter instant that exiles a creature, and its controller gets a 1/1 shapeshifter creature token with changeling. So you get a creature that's all creature types. So this is a card, I have it as a solid B. I think it's really bad as a generic removal spell. I don't know why you'd pay 3 mana, get a creature, and give your opponent a creature back when we've been talking about generous gifts and Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exiles. Like, white is good at exiling and dealing with a single creature without the drawback, but there are shenanigans because it's a tribal instant, which we've seen, like Hakan, for example, being able to cast things from the graveyard in the tribal style decks and shenanigans like that. So those are the decks that make it a B. In those decks that have some sort of payoff for this being a tribal instant and can pull off shenanigans, then it's going to be one of the best removable spells in your deck. In the other 99% of commander decks, play your swords and your paths and your generous gifts or whatever.
That's fair. It's the best. It's one of the best cards in my tribal deck. So it's like an S plus in tribal. It could be good in other tribal decks, I guess. But otherwise, you just don't run it. So that's why I put it as a B. Like, it's very good in a very particular subsection. But Krim doesn't like it. How dare you?
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, B?
It's
Good.
Yeah. Okay. You know what? Sure. I'll give it a B. I mean, it's it rides the line of being so mediocre that it would live up to just being average. Right? So
it's only good in tribal decks, essentially. You would never put it in a non-tribal deck, really, right? And even in tribal decks, it's pretty questionable. So
what do you mean it's questionable?
Cutting it close. It's cutting it.
You saw Hakan. You saw what Hakan was doing. With
I mean, in that deck, it's insane, right? But that's literally like one single deck. Every other deck is like mediocre, right?
That's why it's a B.
I feel like if it wasn't for tribal being Tomer's favorite deck and him playing it several times on Commander Clash, we probably all would have given this D's. Like that, it is that one deck that's like
I showed you the light. I showed you the light. All right. Yeah. People have to respect the crib swaps. All right. I showed you what's up. That's what's up. Oh yeah, it's so mediocre until I get you with it, and then it's not suddenly so mediocre, is it? When I get you.
Sure. I guess
it's an S. All right. Moving on.
Homer's just upgrading by the second.
All right, moving on. We're going to Imprisoned in the Moon. I'm just going to read it because I don't remember whose turn it was to read these things. This is a 3 mana blue enchantment, 2 and a blue for an aura that says enchant creature, land, or planeswalker. The enchanted permanent is a colorless land with tap to add colorless and loses all other card types and abilities. So you enchant a creature, a land, or a planeswalker, and it just becomes a generic land that taps for colorless and doesn't do anything. Kind of insane if you're targeting a commander with it, because they don't leave they don't switch zones, so they can't go back to the command zone. So if you imprison a commander in the moon, then they're stuck there until you get rid of the enchantment, basically. So it's a really evil, salty inducing, possibly a way of dealing with commanders. But also in blue, you have now a way of dealing with planeswalkers and lands and whatnot, which is pretty cool. All of us, me, Krim, and Seth, gave it a B. Richard, you gave it a D. You do not like this card.
I'm actually shocked that you guys. I don't think this is controversial at all. Like, it's sorcery
4%.
speed.
Yeah,
it's sorcery speed, and you're ramping your opponent at the same time. Like, if I need to sorcery speed something, there are many better cards I could be doing. If at instant speed I'm about to die, this isn't going to save me. So I could see it if you are like an enchantment matters deck or something, right? Or maybe
Play it in my
you play
Alayla.
ley lines to get flash, or you have something, but this is terrible, right? I'd rather just untap and like wrath, bounce, whatever. Like there's so many things I could be doing than Imprisoned in the Moon. And then you somehow ramp off of it, which is just like a kicker. Like I don't know why. So I actually.
But you love ramp, Richard. Path to Exile.
No,
this doesn't trigger. This doesn't trigger your bad white ramp, right? Or does it?
What?
No, it is.
It does.
It's a land. It's a land. It does trigger.
Yeah,
it does.
yeah.
But
Think about
This
that.
is
Right.
rated. This has
It's
got to
still
be
a- it's
rated
still a D.
high. Wait,
That has
wait,
to be
wait,
an
wait,
A
wait,
for
wait.
Richard.
Richard, what about like hard to deal with commanders?
But why are you dealing with it at sorcery speed on your turn, right?
Well, the thing
I
is,
just let it do whatever it wants, and then if they try to kill me with it, respond to it at instant speed, right?
Or you never have to worry about it by just turning it into a colorless land, and now they have to struggle to find a way to deal with your own enchantment.
And they're upset with you, and like you're down a card at
Good.
the table.
Well, but they're imprisoned in the moon. They can be as mad as they want to be until they get out of the moon, right? Like so.
I feel like blue doesn't need that much though. Like blue has counters, blue has bounce, like blue can steal creatures, like I don't know. In other colors that don't have all those options, and I think permanently dealing with a commander has more value. The reason I have it at a B is just purely Enchantress decks. Like I actually agree with like 99% of what Richard said, but to me it's a card that I think if you're playing an Enchantment Matters deck, then this is like one of the better options that you can be playing in your removal slots, which would make it good in a small percentage of decks. I will say overall, removal spells that stay on the battlefield and go away once they die, I think are not very good in Commander anymore, because we have so many options that are spell-based and actually deal with the thing forever that I'm not a big fan in general of Imprisoned in the Moon and Oblivion Rings or anything that style of effect in general.
O-ring is not great anymore. But I still think there's room for like example how you oublietted my Scarab God.
That was pretty
pretty
sweet.
Right?
sick.
So like
Isn't
the
O-ring
same-
strictly better?
No, because
No.
O-ring puts it back into like if you put on a
In the
commander, they can
command
just put it
zone.
back in the command zone.
Oh,
And whereas this-
no.
This
but
is
you can-
essentially an oubliette.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an oubliette that can hit lands and planeswalkers. So that's kind
Right.
of-
That is
Sweet.
that is kind of sweet.
And like maybe instead of having to bounce the commander, what if I just tuck it away? What is kind of like the commander tuck rule for until you answer it.
I will run like Pongify and rapid hybridization over this 9 times out of 10. But there are 2 decks that I think this is an all-star in. And Seth already said Enchantress, like specifically the aura version of it, super, super good in those decks because it's an aura that deals with, stuff very effectively. But also, it's even better. It is A+, it's an S tier in one particular deck, and that's Moonfolk Tribal. Because you're literally, you're imprisoning them in the moon. Boom. Boom.
Next.
Got him.
Next.
cut the podcast. We're done.
The music.
Flavor win. You can't. I already won. What can you do? I already won. The Moonfolk have risen to the occasion. The tides
Have the
turned.
Moonfolk won outside of that? I like maybe I'll concede that point. Then
It's
how
a
about
moral
that?
The flavor win is the only win they can accomplish. They gotta take what
I
they
mean,
can.
how else are you gonna win with Moonfolk? I actually did win with Moonfolk by the way on Commander Class, so I dare you to try to belittle the Moonfolk, but Imprisoned the Moon is definitely their silver bullet, if you could say. Anyway, I like that. Anyway, okay, so we're gonna be skipping over to a couple other things that are played a lot on EDHREC, but we're just gonna quickly go over them. Putrefy is a 3-mana, it's a Golgari one, 3-mana instant, destroy target artifact or creature, can't be regenerated. Richard, Seth, and Krim, I'll put it as a D. I put it as a C just because it's budget filler, essentially. And then we got like the Orzhov version of it is Mortify. It's the same thing, except it hits creatures or enchantments instead of artifacts and creatures. Again, D's all around. I give it a C because budget, filler. Then we got Abrupt Decay, which nobody liked. It's a Golgari instant, 2 mana, can't be countered. Ooh la la. Can only destroy a non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less. Not very good in battle cruiser Magic. It gets a little bit
Good
worse.
in CDH.
Good in CDH. Otherwise, D-Spark all the way, baby. It's like the opposite, but better.
I'm actually curious about this. Why do you think Z-Spark is so much better than Abrupt Decay? Aren't they two coins of the same thing, except this one Crim can't counterspell? or are you saying like all threats in Commander are 4 or more?
All threats aren't 4 or more, because like Rhystic Study is the big one. Yeah. I think the majority are 4 or more. And also it exiles instead of can't be countered. So I think that's an upgrade.
Yeah.
But D's. So nobody's gonna fight for it, I guess. We're gonna go over to the last one that I think is noteworthy. It doesn't see that much play. So Putrefy 20%, Mortify 15%, Abrupt Decay 17%. That's why we mention it, but we're not gonna talk about it because nobody likes it. This is one that I just threw in because I thought it's notable that few people play. Mythos of Netheroy at 7% on EDHREC, which is kind of low. This is an Abzan spell. It's 2 and a black, and it destroys target non-land permanent if it's a creature or if you pay green and white to cast a spell. So you can either cast it for 2 and a black to destroy target creature, or if you spend Abzan colors, green, white, and black to cast it, you can destroy any non-land permanent. So if you spend Abzan colors to cast it, it is essentially a generous gift / Beast Within. It doesn't hit a non-land permanent, but it doesn't give your opponent a 3/3 token to punch you in the face with every single turn. And I don't see it that often. We don't really cast it. I honestly forget that it exists 9 times out of 10. We gave it an A's across the board. I saw Crim had it initially as a B, but I think when I mentioned it doesn't have a creature, he immediately swapped over to
Look, yeah.
Why do you think we don't play it? Is it just because it's Abzan?
Abzan. Because you have to be an Abzan.
Generous Gift are the exact same colors, but
that's
better. Wait, so what would you play
better
in the Abzan deck? Would you play a Generous Gift over Mythos?
Yes. You got Generous Gifts, you got Beast Within.
Yeah.
Those are over Mythos. Then you have Anguished Unmaking, which is kind of the same, but but Mythos is better. You got Assassin's Trophy, which I think is better than Mythos because it's 1 mana less and it hits lands. So there's just so many other options competing for. Although I do think it's really good. The problem is, as we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, how many of these target removal spells can you afford to play? That aren't rats, that aren't sweeping the board, that are just killing one thing. How many can you afford to play? So I think that Mythos is really good, but it sometimes just gets caught in the numbers game because this color combination has so much really good flexible removal.
I mean, from a recent Commander Clash, I will always make room for this. I played like 6 board wipes in an aggro deck, right? Not even counting the Ondu inversion, so that's 7. So I think like a chunk of my decks will always be a ton of removal. And if they're not removal, I am praying that I am somehow going to kill you much faster. Like, so I think spot removal, there's always like at least 4 to 5 spots.
I will run it over.
Crim doesn't play WinCon, so he has all his
My commander? My commander is the WinCon, okay? that counts.
9 times out of 10, your commander is like Nevinyrral, and it's also a removal spell.
But a WinCon, right?
I guess.
Making all your opponents want to stop playing is kind of a WinCon.
Gift of Immortality on Nevinyrral, and then just do that party loop over and over. Got it.
Are you sure you don't like Alrund's Epiphany and Standards, Crim? I think you'd love Izzet Control.
I don't like extra turns.
Okay. I will write it over Generous Gift and Beast Within, not because it's a better card, but hipster appeal, because it sees a lot less play. So it's like, when you have the chance, you run it, I'm only going to run like 4 target removals in a deck, but...
Abzan has so much good removal. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Abzan on its own, I actually don't see that many Abzan decks, but if you do, they have access to the best removal in Magic.
Yeah.
I would go like Swords and then Anguish Unmaking and then probably like a Generous Gift or something and then maybe a Mythos, There's too many options. It's really
good. I think it
maybe
goes
D-Spark
Swords,
over it.
Assassin's Trophy, Anguished Unmaking.
D-Spark.
All right, let's get your top three,
Top
five. We have a lot of S's. I want to hear your actual rankings for like top removal.
Oh, top, easy. I already got it.
Top threes.
Oh. Yeah,
Top three right off the bat. I would go with Hagra mauling. And I'm not even joking because of the MDFC mode. Swords to plowshares. I think that's just way too nice to not play. And then I think like after that it'd probably be, if I'm in Golgari, okay, I would have to, just on power, I think I would go Assassin's Trophy. But I think it's Anguished Unmaking.
So I think for me it's hard because I tend to think of removal by color, and I kind of have like a ranking in my head, like in these colors, this is order I play them in. But overall, I think I'm going to cheat a little bit and throw Beast Within and Generous Gift together because they're essentially the same card that are just color shifted. I think they would be number one, followed by Swords to Plowshares, and then followed by the last one is the toughest one. I would probably go with Anguished Unmaking though. I think I'd go Anguished Unmaking in the third slot.
I think I'd go top one, Anguish Unmaking. Second one has to be Swords to Plowshares. And then depending how I feel, it would be either like a Generous Gift. I think Generous Gift is better than Beast Within because elephants are just better than beasts. It would be like Generous Gift or like a Deadly Rollick. I think those are the top ones. But it's 100% Anguish Unmaking, number one. Number two has to be Swords to Plowshares. And then number three would be like Generous Gift. Generous Gift. I'll go Generous Gift, fine.
Or Hagra mauling.
No.
All right. My top three, Beast Within, Generous Gift, Chaos Warp. And you'll notice they're all the same card.
They are the same card.
And they're all easy to cast, and that's all you need. That covers my spot removal for all of my decks. Black and blue, I don't play spot removal, right? So that literally covers all spot removal.
I'm eager to see the stats on Commander Clash. Like, what do we actually end up playing the most? We have really weird restrictions, so that's going to alter things a little bit. But it would be cool to see what we get on average, what our top most target removal ends up actually being.
We were called out last podcast that every time we make these lists, there's a bunch of cards we never play.
Fair enough.
We gotta actually play
jot it down.
Cards. You gotta jot it down and play these cards.
We say a lot of things on the podcast, though. Like, we keep saying, like, Richard can't keep getting away with it, and then Richard keeps getting away with it. So, like, I mean, there's a lot of things we say but not do. So let's see if we can stick to it. We'll see. And also, that's going to be wrapping up our list, everybody. So on Spotify, if you disagree with us or agree with us, you can reach us directly at tomer@mtggoldfish.com or richard@mtggoldfish.com, or you could just send us Clash Mail over at Twitter. If you use the hashtag Clash Mail, you can send us a message. We'll check it over there. And then also, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can make sure to like and subscribe. That really helps us out if you enjoy it. And if you disagree, maybe how about you give us your top three best removals in the comment section below. We'd love to check it out and see maybe if we're wrong or if you agree with us or whatnot. Or maybe there's cool stuff that we actually left out in our list that maybe you should bring up to our attention. We'll check that out as well. And that's going to be it, everybody. Hope you enjoyed. Thanks for listening / watching / whatever medium you're actually tuning in. And until next time, friends. See ya.